If you've sewn pants or skirts, you know that they are finished on the top with a waistband in most cases. There is another way, and that is with a facing on the inside, and it's so comfortable. What you'll see today is a combination of the front fly zipper. It's just a little bit different to accommodate a waist facing, and you're gonna love how it feels. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I have a standalone sewing technique video for you. I make it separately and not linked to a specific pattern because this can work for other patterns. And I'm very excited to share because one of the most important things that we want with our clothes is that they are comfortable. You've probably sewn rectangle or curved waistbands onto the tops of skirts or pants before. They aren't hard to do. It is the most common way that you'll see these types of garments finished on the top. In contrast to some ready-to-wear men's pants, they do have the facing inside quite a lot. And I know this from looking at my husband's pants and also from unpicking a lot of pants, you know, my refashions, my thrift flips. I've been doing that for years, and I always noticed that waist facing inside and thought, why don't we get more of that in our patterns? So in the past, when I've drafted my own skirts, some shorts, some pants, I have actually drafted my own facings to go on the inside. And usually those have been finished with a simple zipper insertion in the back. It is a very simple way to finish something on the top. I have these old videos that show you how to create facings back from 2018. But this time we're bringing it up a notch. We're not doing a simple centered zipper insertion. We're doing an actual fly front. You see this in a lot of trousers, the typical fly front, which I have a few videos about. This time there's only a few variations, and it's got to do with up to where you sew the zipper because there is a facing on the inside. I am going to be using a pattern to show you this technique, and this is actually the third pattern that I've encountered that uses a facing on the inside plus the zipper. They all have similar concepts and also a few small differences. And the way that this is going to be sewn, how I'm going to show you, is one way that I'm extremely happy with. Combining all the different ways I've seen, I'm very happy with this, the way it turns out. Now, this is in the context of a new pattern release, Notions, in a couple of hours. These are the Largo Cargos, cargo pants. And on the top, we don't have a waistband, we have a facing. And that's different to all the other pants that we have at Love Notions. All of them have either an elasticized waist or curved waistband or some type of waistband. Not this time, we have a facing. And as I'm preparing the content around that pattern, I decided to film this separately. Now, I'm going to be converting some of my favorite skirts and pants to have a facing on the inside later on. I'm going to show you how to do that, and when I do show you how to do that, you can create a bunch of facings for your patterns that already fit you, and you will be so happy. And then you can come back and watch this one as a refresher on how to sew it. I want to mention a few basic concepts first. And some of these apply to any facing. If you're sewing a facing on a hem, on a neckline, on an armhole, wherever you're sewing a facing, you always want to stay stitch your main fabric first to prevent that from stretching and deforming as you manipulate and you sew your garment. So you don't want all that area of the waist, in this case, because it's pants, to stretch out and not fit your facing. Keep stay stitching in your mind as one of the first steps that you do with any project, whether it's in the pattern or not. You know, sometimes you don't see that step in a pattern, but just know that it's going to help you retain the shape and the size, and then your facing is going to fit. That's important. The second concept I want to mention that is important with facings is to block fuse. And I do this with every single facing on the planet. I look at my pattern piece, whatever shape it has. I cut out a piece of fabric slightly larger than that. I get my fusible interfacing, fuse that on slightly larger, and then I place my pattern pieces and then cut them out. That prevents the piece from deforming. So if you cut your facing, cut your interfacing separately, went to the iron and then tried to fuse them on, one, you would end up with a wonky shape because usually curved shapes are going to move a little bit once you touch them, and then the fabric usually is going to react to the adhesive on that interfacing, and then your facing is usually going to turn out smaller than what you're sewing it onto, and you're going to think, why does that happen? What did I do? Block fusing prevents all of that, because if the fabric reacted to the interfacing and it shrunk a little bit, it doesn't matter, it's already done that. Then you go ahead and cut your shape and it's always going to fit. I've done this about 1 billion times with all the facings that I've ever done, and the result is always really accurate. And so this is a facing, it goes on the waist. There's no difference here. We are block fusing as well, that is what I do. and I always get amazing results. With this technique, we're not sewing the zipper all the way up to the top of the waist like we do with most pants, where there's a waistband going to be there afterwards. So of course you want the zipper to go all the way up to the top. In this case, we are stopping from the raw edge of the waist 2 inches down. So it's going to be easier for you to manage the technique if your zipper is a little longer than what you need. You know, if it's an inch longer, it's much better because your zipper pull, it's a bulky little thing, it's going to be way up there where it won't disturb you when you're trying to sew on your zipper. It's better to have that than just be fiddling with all that bulkiness right there. So I always suggest a longer zipper than what you need, and then we can just trim away tape and take away teeth, and it's very easy. I'm going to show you how. When I buy zippers for pants, I just buy long ones, 8, 9 inches, doesn't matter, because it's just going to be easier to trim away. That's what I think. I'm going to show you the finished result of the facing so that we can see what we are aiming for. Now this is a peek at one of the pants you're going to see tomorrow, but just the top part. Here is top stitching that you see there, and that's for the facing that's on the inside. So it's all really clean up to here. No waistband, as you can see. And then you can see the zipper teeth is going to stop around there. You need this space to be free for the facing to fold underneath and for you to be able to do a buttonhole and a button. If you had zipper tape and teeth up to here, you would not be able to do a buttonhole. This is how it looks on the back. You can see the top stitching there. This is how it looks on the inside. The edge at the bottom was serged with a matching thread. It's understitched to keep it inside. This layer is interfaced and it's been folded in towards the inside. There is a center back seam on the facing, but then it just curves and then ends up here in the center. You see that the facing reaches all the way to the edge right here. On this other side, it also reaches all the way to the edge. So it's a very neat finish. In the tutorial, you're going to see exactly how to do it to achieve this. The only difference is that in my tutorial, I have lengthened my facing by 1/4 inch so that I can fold it to the inside here instead of having the edge just serged. So that is an optional thing you can do. I just want that folded edge on the inside instead of it being serged. Personal preference, it won't change the technique at all. So if you don't want to do that, just ignore that. All I've done is made the facing a tad longer so that I can fold it up by 1/4 inch. It feels amazing on, it's still snug, it's still going to keep up your pants or your skirts, but it feels much more comfortable. It doesn't dig in. It doesn't constrict you in the same way that a waistband does. It just feels really smooth and comfortable, and I love the sensation of the facing inside. That's why I've done it with so many of my other patterns, my simple pattern skirts and pants. But I'm showing you this time how to do it including the zipper. It's going to be super doable. You'll be able to do it for sure. So let's see. Before we start doing all of these seams, what needs to happen before is that you need to serge the edges separately of these extended facings and the crotch curve. It's just easier to get that out of the way first before doing any of the seams. Careful here where you have this shape. I like to serge up to there and then start over on that other place so that my blade doesn't end up making a hole there. It is a tricky area to serge, but it is totally possible. I won't be serging on this scrap, but I have done that on my actual pants, so make sure you do that. I already have 2 videos showing you how to do the exact same zipper technique. The only difference is that the zipper in those cases goes all the way up to the raw edge of the waistline. So have a look at those if you want more in depth about the zipper. It's the exact same thing with a few differences. I'm just showing a small summary here. You can draw your seam line on the fabric with a friction pen. That makes it easier. You just join the dot on the pattern piece with a notch on the top of the waist, and that is your actual seam line. This dot on the bottom is a crucial area because this is where we're going to reinforce, and this is where the stitch length changes when we sew the seam. For a regular zipper insertion where you would sew all the way up to the top, from that dot up, you would do a basting stitch all the way up to the top of the waistline. In this case, it's different. I have drawn a mark that's 2 inches below the raw edge of the waistline, and that's where the zipper is going to stop. On the top, it'll be free to allow the facing to be folded in at a later stage. So from this little line up to the dot, we're going to do a long stitch length, just a basting stitch that will be removed later. And at the dot at the bottom, we reinforce and then change to a regular stitch length to continue sewing that seam all the way down. So let's start by doing this simple seam, a longer stitch length from the line we marked that's 2 inches down from the top up to the dot, and then reinforcing there and continuing the curve with a regular stitch length. Now let's turn the garment wrong sides up and open up the seam. This is going to be on the right side of the body. This is going to be on the left side of the body. This is important. If I were to place this on my tummy as one, this side would be on the left, this side would be on the right side of my body, in the same way that you're looking at my hands from above. Now what we're going to do is snip into the seam allowance of the crotch curve that's on the right side, only on that side so that both seam allowances can go to the left. That's the only side you need to snip. You don't need to snip into both sides. I like to reinforce that by hand to not leave a raw edge. That's something extra. Let's just put a pin to hold the seam allowance towards the left like it has to be so we can see it from the other side of the garment. Looking at the other side, I'm going to transfer the pin over to the right side of the garment, making sure the seam allowance stays towards the left. Make sure both facing pieces are open, one to each side. Make sure they don't go all towards the same side, so I'm going to put a pin there as well. Now we are going to edge stitch. We already know what side the seam allowance has to be going towards the left wearer's side. We're going to start on the crotch curve and we're going to stop right up to where we finish that seam, so not all the way up to the top. So we're working from the right side of the garment here. Okay, that's how it's looking with the edge stitching done. You can see the right side of my fabric is shiny and then the wrong side of my fabric is not shiny. Let's turn it back to wrong sides up so we can extend these facing pieces again. Wrong sides up. Now from the seam line towards the left side where we see the L there, I'm going to draw a line away from the seam line that's 1¼ inches. I'm doing that with a friction pen. For the real deal, I did measure this and do it very neatly. I'm just drawing it with my pen here, no measuring, but you get the idea. Remember when we did the seam line, there was a dot where we reinforced and changed the stitch length. I'm also going to mark it over here on this wrong side so that I can see where the dot was. Now we're going to take our zipper and we're going to put our zipper right sides together with these facing pieces. That means that the zipper pull is going to be touching the facings and the edge of the zipper tape is going to go along this line that I drew previously. From that little dot that we just marked, I want to make sure my zipper stop at the bottom is just a hair above it, maybe 1/8 inch, so that I don't run into this with my needle later on. Remember, the pull is touching the wrong side of the fabric right here, and I've got the zipper tape aligned with that blue line I had drawn previously. Holding everything in place, I'm going to pin the other side of the zipper tape onto the right facing, only to the facing, not catching the leg. This can be done super quickly once you get used to the technique. You can be done with your whole zipper in like 2 or 3 minutes. Now remember, we're not sewing the zipper tape all the way up to the waistline. Remember, we have that mark 2 inches from the waist down. We are going to have an excess of zipper tape and zipper teeth that we are going to remove later. On the other side, I can clearly see up to where I sewed. So I'm going to poke a pin right through there so I know where to start sewing my zipper tape. I'm going to make a mark all across the zipper tape so that I know that is the correct height. So I'm going to sew the zipper tape from that line all the way down, holding it in place. Get your zipper presser foot ready. Use the left side to clip it on. I'm going to move the needle to the left so I can get as close as I can to the zipper teeth. And I'm going to start sewing from that line that I drew, reinforce, down. That's all done, and now what we're going to do is flip the zipper tape so that we see the zipper pull. This is how much the zipper is going to be offset towards the left side of the body. This is not a centered zipper insertion. So you should have this excess right here, and we're going to fix it down by edge stitching. I need to change the position of the zipper presser foot to the other side to do this. This type of presser foot just allows you a closer access to sew next to the zipper teeth, and we need to return the needle to its original centered position. Remember, we're sewing from that mark where we started sewing, not from the edge of the waist up on the top. Okay, so that's done. Now we can flip our zipper back to how it was. Now this next part is where a lot of people make a mistake, where you assume the zipper teeth are going to be right on top of that seam, but that's wrong. That would make it a centered zipper insertion, and a fly front is not that technique. So if you see your zipper teeth aligning with the seam underneath at the crotch and they're at the same level, that should be a red flag. That is not correct. You need to correct that right now, because otherwise you'll make a mistake. What we have to do is just let the zipper go where it has to go and just move over towards the left side so that all the seam allowances are going towards the left side. The seam allowance on the crotch is going to be nice and flat, and the zipper is going to be away from that towards the left. You're going to see that the facing on the right side is wider than the facing on the left. Having all of this flat and nicely laid, it's time to sew the tape that's still loose over to the left facing. We're just going to pin that in place. Make sure everything is correct before pinning it down. Let's sew this down. In this case, you don't need to be that close to the zipper teeth. Remember to stop where your mark is. Don't go all the way up to the top. After doing that first row of stitching, there are other people that like doing a second one so that this is super reinforced. You can do that if you want to and just do one close to the edge. One is fine for me. Now we flipped it over to the right side. Over here on the left wearer side is where we have all the zipper underneath. I'm going to mark an L there. That's where we do the top stitching traditionally. From the seam line towards the left, feel your zipper teeth underneath. Usually you can mark from 1 inch to 1.125 to 1.25 to do the first row of top stitching. I'm going to be doing 1.125 inches for this one. I prefer a narrower look in general. I think wider looks more like men's jeans. At the bottom with my fingers, I can feel where the zipper stop is, and I'm going to just freehand draw this curve going underneath the zipper stop, making sure my needle is not going to bump into it when I top stitch this. Even though I've drawn my top stitching line all the way up to the top, I'm not going to be sewing all the way to the top at this point because I want to be able to get in here and cut away some zipper tape and teeth later. If I already top stitch this down, there's no way I could get rid of zipper tape right here. I could get rid of zipper teeth, but I couldn't get rid of zipper tape. So that's why I'm only going to start sewing from the level that I've been sewing along the whole way, which is 2 inches down from the raw edge of the waist down. So from here down to there. Again, I'm bringing over the zipper presser foot because it just gives you better access. The left part of the presser foot is not going to bump into the teeth there like a regular presser foot would. I'm just going to be careful and follow my mark, being as accurate as I can. With this top stitching, I'm actually catching the zipper tape underneath as well, so it's going to be pretty reinforced. Sometimes if I'm working with a really busy print, I'll just do 1 row of top stitching, but if it's jeans or linen, I'll do 2 rows. And with the second one, I'll just use the edge of the presser foot as a guide against the stitch I'd just done to get the second row to look nice and neat. This is how the zipper looks up to this point. Of course, this is fake. This is just made from scraps. I just thought it was going to be easier to see with this light color fabric and dark thread. The zipper is still in there. I'm still not going to unsew the basting stitch. At this point, I'm going to leave the zipper just like it is. I like to get it out of the way when I start sewing the pants. So this would be one of the first steps that I do in the actual pant construction. Let me show you what it looks like on the real thing up to this stage because it's exactly the same stage I'm at with the real pants. These are my real pants. I'm using red linen. I decided not to do the edge stitching on the crotch and all the way up. I want it to just look super clean. I think that is an optional step. It just depends on the fabric. If it was denim, I would have done it for sure. But you don't need to do it if you don't want to. I'm also not planning to top stitch the crotch on the front at all. Even later, I just want to leave it nice and clean. I want to leave the seam allowances inside nice and free. As soon as you top stitch seam allowances down, especially on a curve, you create a sort of tension on the inside, which I want to avoid for these pants. You can see that the top stitching only starts 2 inches away from the top edge up to this point. I reinforce that by hand so it's really neat on the top, and you can see my 2 rows. I still have my friction pen mark there that's going to come out with the iron. This is how it looks like from the wrong side. I'm marking the right wearer side and the left wearer side on the facings there so you can see. You can see that the leftover facing on the left is much smaller than on the right side. That is correct. These edges were serged separately first before doing any of the steps. As I mentioned, this is a real thing, so I did serge these. At this point, this is all I'm going to do with the zipper. I'm going to continue constructing my pants. You can see I've got the front patch pockets hand basted on. I'll go ahead and top stitch those. And I'm going to return to finish all the details of the zipper when I'm at the stage where I'm ready to sew on the facing, which is towards the very end, once the side seams, the inseams are sewn, all of that. So there's quite a lot to do until we return to the facing and the zipper at the end. Here we have the facing pieces. Now you're going to have a really straight edge, and this is actually where the grain line was. So this is on the straight of grain there. But as this keeps curving out, it goes off the grain. And this is actually the center back. That's what we're going to sew together, 3/8 seam allowance and press open. Now if we extend this, we're going to have a curve like this. Goes like that. It's going to follow the shape of the waist, and this bottom edge, the longer curve, this is the one that you would serge so that you get a clean finished edge in the original pattern. Now I have made my facing just 1/4 inch longer so that I can fold this in by 1/4 inch instead. I like that finish, so I'm going to go ahead and do a quick guide stitch so that I can use it to guide my pressing, so that this can be super neat like that. I've been to the iron, press the bottom edge up, Remember, this is the original length of the facing. You could have serged that, and that's the same technique. It's just that I extended mine a little bit so I can have this folded edge. I did that with a guide stitch, and it's all very neat. And I matched the center back with the center back. Now when you keep going over to the left side of the pants, this is where we have the top stitching, and this edge is actually the center of the pants, and that's going to match the notch that you have over here. This is designed to be trimmed off, so that should match here. And then in a sec, we're going to trim off a little bit so we can finish that. But just leave it. It's just easier to have a symmetrical waistband and trim off the excess than have a right one and a left one. That can get pretty confusing. So just know that on the left wear side, where we have this, we're going to have a little more excess than on the other side. This little mark should match this fold that we have over here. And then when we go around the other side, it's a little different. Now, when we open this up, you can see the interfacing. That was actually the seam line there. Put a pin, but this is folded like this. Remember, we have that little overlap there because the zipper is offset to the left. So let's just situate this like it's supposed to be. Where the pin is, that is actually the mark, the center of the pants. And in this case, that is where the dot is going to reach, right here. We have excess here as well, and we need that excess because on this side, we're even going to have more excess this way once we put the zipper shield behind that. But for now, I'm just pinning. Everything matches 1 to 1. Stay stitching is there. You can see how much it's frayed over the course of the sewing of these pants. So it's really important to not manipulate much and to stay stitch. Keeping that pinned right there. Now at this point, I'm going to open up this zipper. It's still closed, but we need to open it up. So down below here, I'm just going to find a stitch. Remember, we had done a long stitch length here. So I'm just going to be very careful and find one so I can start opening it up. From this part down, we have a short stitch length, and this area was reinforced. So all I'm opening up is from this part up. Okay, the zipper is open and it's exposed. We can see how this will never be seen when you wear it. Even if there's tension, this will never open and you'll never see the zipper. It's nice to have a matching color, but if it wasn't matching, no one would know. Remember over here, we had sewn the zipper up to a point. So from this raw edge down, it's 2 inches on both sides. So we can see all of this excess here. Now I'm going to pull this down, and I'm never going to bring it back up again until I'm ready because I don't want this to fall out. So from here, you can see my stitch. I'm going to go ahead and cut about 3/8 of an inch of zipper tape so that it can be caught underneath the facing. So I'm just going to be careful. And I want to trim away these excess zipper teeth, of course. I don't want those to be inside my facing. So I've just got these pliers, grab one and literally just pull it out like that, one by one. It's very easy, making the whole table shake here. So you can see I've sewn up to there. I've got excess zipper tape and the teeth are below that. So when I sew the facing on over this side, I'm never gonna hit that zipper teeth, and I'm gonna be able to just finish it right in there. And then this is gonna be caught inside while I'm going to have space over here to do my buttonhole at the end. So that's why I didn't want to top stitch this all the way up, because then I can't get rid of the zipper tape properly. So that's why I'm doing this part in 2 stages. So that's on that side. Now on this side, it's something similar. Up here, we also have the stitching just up to here. On this one, I'm gonna leave a little more zipper tape than I did on the other side so that I can fold it back. I'm gonna leave about 3/4 of an inch right here. And I'm gonna remove those teeth. I just want to take this and fold it back, sort of in a 45-degree angle over here, so that this is going to be tucked away, and I'm going to get a nice folded edge of the tape right there and no raw areas. I'm just going to pin that down, hold that in place. For this side, it doesn't matter if this is raw, this is going to be completely covered by the facing. But in this side, it's a little different. Now, you've seen zipper shields before. This is actually open like this, and there's a little seam that we sew in the bottom. Flip it to this side. And then the 2 raw edges are serged together, and this is going to go behind the right side, and it's going to cover this from the back. I'm going to place the shield right there. This is going to cover all of that of the zipper right here. We're going to have a serged edge of the facing and the serged edge of the shield. I made my shield longer on purpose so that I could trim it off. You can see the shield protrudes from behind this area. And where I put the pin holding that tape, I'm going to put the pin again, this time catching the shield. This is how we're going to top stitch the shield on. So basically I'm going to stitch from here right on the edge, catching all of this, going on top of that little seam that we have there, as far down as I can as the zipper pull will let me, because it's hard to get easy access down to the very bottom, but as low as it can go. This top section where there's no tape, this looks wider, but once you get down it's the same width, it just looks wider because there's no zipper tape, and there's zipper tape over here. So that's how the shield looks like on the other side. You're going to see that there's a seam catching it in place, and it's fixed in place over here. Zipper tape is nicely folded and tucked away in there. There's no raw edges, so that's nice. So on the right side of your waist, this is where you're going to have the shield. You're going to need a longer length if you compared it to the one on the other side. I'm going to trim away this excess length that I've left myself on the shield. Anyway, now we can sew the facing on from one side to the other side. 3/8 seam allowance. So I'm going to start over here, go all the way around. Like with any curve facing, we're going to do a few snips here just to relieve the tension so that the facing can go to the inside without pulling. Now there's some areas that have a few more layers than others here. Before trimming off the excess, I want to understitch. So we want to extend this facing, keep the seam allowance under the facing, and start understitching. Now I don't want to do it right here on the edge. I want to leave a good space without it so that it could be clean right here. So I'm going to start understitching about 3/4 of an inch from the edges. Okay, one more thing before we trim off that excess, and I want to finish sewing this. Remember, I had just sewn up to there. So I've drawn the lines I want to sew with the friction pen so that we can have this be continuous. This won't bother me anymore. I've already cut and trimmed away everything that I needed to over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So that's done. I'm still going to have space to do a buttonhole over here. I folded the facing to the inside so that it's nice and neat and nice and straight here. And now I'm going to trim off the excess. I'm going to leave myself, I don't know, about 5/8 of an inch right here. So what we do here is fold this in, and that's how it's going to be finished. And you can see that when we top stitch on this other side, I'm also going to fold the facing back so that it's nice and neat. I don't want to cut it all wonky. So this one's also going to be folded to the inside like that. Now that the centers are sorted, you can see how this is going to finish up later, like that. Once everything's done, we can do a buttonhole and sew a button right here on the shield area. But I'm going to take my time and just pin the facing to the inside, hand baste it, so then we can top stitch it. I've got the facing hand basted on. It's all super neat. I want to sew from the wrong side of the facing so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to follow along the edge, trying to be as neat as I can. Okay, it's done. The pants just need a good press. This is actually the last step of the whole pant because everything else is done. And it's so neat. And now the last step is just to do a buttonhole right here and sew on a button. And that's it. If you like the idea of a facing on the waist, don't miss out on this channel because I will have a video showing you how to create a facing on another style that has a waistband. So you can have that comfortable sensation and easier technique in sewing as well. I know I'm going to be doing that for a few of my favorites. You know, when I get a fit right on a pattern, I just sew them on repeat because why not? It's so relaxing. You can just change up the fabric and have different looks with the same pattern. So make sure you subscribe, turn on all the notifications so you don't miss out on the fun content over here, and keep your eyes open for the Largo Cargos. I'm excited to share my 2 versions with you in a couple of hours, so stay tuned. Bye.